If you've paid attention to Indian politics lately, you've heard the phrase Viksit Bharat by 2047. It's everywhere. But looking past the campaign speeches, that slogan is actually anchored to a structural, long form economic blueprint published by Niti Aayog. The top line macroeconomic target of this document is massive: expand the Indian economy to $30 trillion dollars by the 100th anniversary of independence. On an individual level, that translates to pushing the nation's per capita income up to $18,000 a year. This blueprint, for precision's sake, is a rigid mathematical threshold, one that demands a specific, high stakes transformation of the entire national economy. The primary obstacle standing in the way of that transformation is a well documented economic phenomenon known as the middle income trap. This trap is a historical graveyard. It's the point where rapidly growing developing economies suddenly lose their momentum, stall out, and fail to reach high income status. According to Niti's own research, looking over the last 70 years, barely a dozen middle income countries have successfully navigated their way out of this trap. India is currently staring directly into this exact economic bottleneck. Becoming a developed nation is not the default, inevitable trajectory for a growing country. The data shows that stalling out is the rule. Breaking through is an incredibly rare exception. To understand the scale of the challenge, we have to look at the financial baseline. Right now, India's per capita income sits at roughly $2,392. To hit the $14,000 high income threshold, India must multiply per capita income 8 times over. Bridging that gap by 2047 requires sustained annual growth between 7 and 10%. Matched against the last decade's 5.4% average, a massive gap remains. The current momentum is insufficient to close the deal. India has to engineer an economic acceleration and maintain it over a multi-decade period. Changing that trajectory requires rewiring how the nation generates wealth. Specifically, the manufacturing sector's share of GDP has to surge from around 15% today to a staggering 25% by 2047. And the real difficulty comes from doing that while simultaneously slashing the economy's carbon intensity by 55% from 2005 levels. India must execute a massive heavy industrialization phase without relying on the cheap carbon playbook used by almost all of the previous successful nations. So, what is the primary resource India plans to utilize to clear these structural hurdles? Human capital. By 2047, the country's population will stabilize at around 165 crore people, with a working age group of 112 crore. That is the single largest workforce in the world, and it is the only asset large enough to actively generate a $30 trillion economy. Right now, that engine is operating at half capacity. Female labor force participation sits at a remarkably low 37%. To hit the productivity targets, that participation rate has to nearly double, pushing past 70%. With half of its economic potential largely sidelined, the $30 trillion target is mathematically impossible unless millions of women are rapidly integrated into the formal workforce. If the blueprint holds, the India of 2047 will be a youthful nation with a median age of 37, operating with 100% universal literacy. But that specific future is not guaranteed by time. It relies entirely on aligning those demographics, expanding industrial reform, and hitting the required growth math. This is a highly coordinated attempt to become the elusive 13th nation to conquer the middle income trap. India has the master blueprint and the demographic capital to do it. But escaping that trap demands an incredibly precise economic acceleration, and the 20-year clock is already ticking.